I'm an alcoholic. My name is Daniel. I've been sober since November 25th, 2006. My sponsor's name is Colin H., and he's at Roxglen. And his sponsor's name is Carl B., and he's at the St. Clemens Group. And both Colin and Carl know that Colin's my sponsor. I sponsor men and women in this program of sobriety. I also sponsor people who are in neither of those categories and are in combinations of those categories. So if you're an alcoholic and you need help, come talk to me and I'll see what I can do. I want to thank the committee for asking me to speak. Thank you, Zach. I was joking with Zach earlier that this is not the first time you've asked me to speak about sex in meetings, and I'm not sure what that means about me. What are you saying? But I've gone through a lot of stuff outside of sobriety and in sobriety when it comes to sex, sexuality, and intimacy, and learning that journey through it. So before I got sober, I don't think I only had sex once without drugs or alcohol in my system. I want to say that. So I know nothing about drinking sober before I got sober. I had a lot of relationships with people, and by people I mostly mean men. And I slept with hundreds of people probably before I got sober. Well, I slept with hundreds of people, let's just say that. Most of them was, an enthusiast, but sometimes I was a professional. When someone offers you money, when you wake up the next morning and there's a stack of 20s on your dresser for the 5th time, you have a part-time job. And you didn't know you applied for that job. But when you're sitting in a pool hall on a Tuesday afternoon with a crop top and your jock showing through your pants, and you say you're looking for love, that's false. that wasn't love I was looking for. Thank you. And so when I got sober, the idea of actually being able to engage in sex not drunk was something that was so scary to me that I kind of went into celibacy. And I would not say that it was kind of by choice, but it was mostly fear. Looking back on it now, I can say that. But at the time, I thought it was probably a best idea. And so I kind of became like, there was either this drunken whore, and then suddenly I'm going to be like this saintly eunuch. And I'm like, and I couldn't figure out why I'm angry all the time. And no one's like saying anything. No, it gets worse. So at about 2 years sober, I thought that maybe the alcohol made me gay. And that I was actually a straight man. So I remember telling my sponsor at that time that I was straight, and then all of a sudden my ringtone goes off and it's Rihanna, Please Stop the Music, like most straight men have for their ringtone. And then, and I'm like, I had a girlfriend. I'm so sorry to her. In 2010, I'm at the World AA Conference. There's a bunch of guys. We all drove, so we were 5 straight guys. And we all drove down to San Antonio, Texas for the World AA Conference. And then my sponsor told me to go and check out the gay and lesbian room. And so I was in the gay and AA welcome room, decorating my badge like most straight men do with sequins and glitter. And then I suddenly had an anxiety attack, and I tried to flee, and there are these 10-foot long French doors, and I try to fling through them, and I end up on this little Juliet balcony, and I'm looking over the Riverwalk in San Antonio, and I'm dying inside. And I write my sponsor, and I tell him, I don't want to be gay. You can't make me do this. I don't want to be here. And then he says, breathe. Go back inside. Let them love you until you can love yourself. And so that began a journey of coming back out again, which I didn't know I needed. I like to say that a month later, I was back out of the closet again. I had a big welcome. It was lovely. But then I started getting in touch with my own sexuality, and also just like exploring sex without alcohol and exploring sex without drugs. And that was something that I was afraid to do. And I didn't know how to go about it. And then I was really, like Michael just read, the idea of being selfless and sex. And I'm like, how the hell how do I get what I want sexually and also be nice? Like, I don't know how that works. And then I remember one time I was with someone and something was going on. There was just something between us, and he seemed a little frustrated, and we were just going to plow ahead. And then I'm like, wait, let's just stop for a second. I'm like, what do you want? And I'm like, I've never asked. But like, not like, I mean, what are you looking for? But like, no, like, what do you want? And they were just like, I could just really use a hug. And so then we just curled up together, and then I got this taste of what intimacy is. You know, is it intimacy for that moment or that day? It was. But there was a moment where it was outside of this desire and more being there for another person. And what I learned in the idea of being selfless and sexual is that there is a way to make that happen where you can be there for another person and they can be there for you, and you can start to figure this out. And through this journey of coming to terms with this, I remember in 2014, one of my sponsor brothers, they had just made $1 million in their job. Another one had just had another baby born into their life. So awesome for them. And what is Daniel doing? Daniel broke up with 4 different people. And I just kept thinking, they're doing better than me, and I'm not figuring it out. And what I started seeing was that I started picking people and starting to choose what I want. And I never, usually I just sold myself to whoever would take me. And I thought maybe this is what love is. And then I started making choices about what I wanted for me. And what I found is that changes through time and that changes through the years. But what I wanted, it started to narrow after each experience. And each person started to help me focus in on what I was looking for in my life. When I was about 10 years sober, I thought I met the man of my dreams. And it was someone I'd actually known for over a decade. And then what I found at a certain point in our relationship, about a year or two in, he stopped taking his head medication. He's not one of us, but he suffers from mental illness. And so during that, he stopped taking the one thing that was helping him. And I thought my life got uprooted. And I'd never been that emotionally raw before. And it hurt so much that I had to close my life a little bit. Like, I felt so vulnerable. I went back to school, and so I was in school, and I was showing up for work, and then I'd spend every night bawling my eyes out uncontrollably, and I didn't know what was going on. And I didn't know how to describe that. I didn't know how to express that kind of grief. Because he's not dead, but the person that I love is no longer there. And I didn't know if I was ever going to get over that. I'm listening to a lot of Robin songs, which I do not recommend. And then somehow through that process and through sponsorship, I was able to start to transition from that. And then I ended up meeting the person that I'm with now. And we've been together for 4 years. He's not, again, one of us. But he understands it, and was trying to find that relationship where we work together. And what does that mean? What does it mean being there for another person? What does it mean them being here for me? What does it mean to express my needs and my wants, and also honoring what their needs and wants are? And through that, I think I'm doing okay. He just texted me that he didn't get Chinese food that I wanted tonight. He got me a mushroom pizza, and that's compromise. And we're going to go with that. I wanted Chinese food. But that's okay. But I found that through my experience and through my hope is that a really thorough step forward, looking at this kind of inventory, looking about what I want and what I can ask for, as opposed to just settling. There were some relationships I learned in 2014 that I don't have to settle for whoever says yes to me. That there is more for me that can work for me if I trust God enough. Just like I did for my sobriety, I can trust Him for these other things too. You know, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to make myself available. I'm going to try these different relationships and see what fits. And it's not that it's their fault. A lot of the ways that I broke up with someone, I'm like, I don't think this is working for me. I don't think it's working for you. Let's just call it what it is, and we'll just go our separate ways. And it was amicable. Like, quite a few people that I dated at some point are friends of mine on Facebook who I love. And I'm really happy for them in their life. And I'm really glad that I still get to have these moments of intimacy with people, even though we're not together anymore, that those moments still exist. And that I'm open to those possibilities, right? The last World Conference that we had in 2015, what I wanted in my life at that time was just to have a lot of fun, and I did. That was a different World Conference. If you want to hear about that, I'll tell you about it later. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Could I get a quick show of hands of where the Ask It baskets may not have made it? Anyone in the back, has the Ask It basket made all the way around? We're gonna, if you could pass it around one more time in case questions come up for this next speaker, and we'll get it in after that. Now we will invite up Michelle from the Hope and Recovery Group. Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is August 26th of 2018. My sponsor is Jennifer HK out of Plano, Texas, and she is my soulmate. We have this capacity to have a communication where sometimes she can just tell me with a look that my insanity is temporarily returning. She is a significant part of my current relationship, and I truly need to have my sponsor as part of my relationship, because when I don't do that, I make very insane decisions, and I think I have to clarify exactly why that is so important for me. To put it briefly, when I came to the rooms of AA, I was divorced 3 times. I had 3 kids from 2 different relationships. I still might technically be married in the state of California, but we're not really sure because there actually is there's no legal, the attorneys just aren't quite sure how to deal with that one. I have been homeless due to my relationships. I have been in multiple domestic violence shelters. And I always have to be really careful when I speak in AA because alcohol and sex for me were such an intertwined relationship. I cannot divorce the two. And so I would really kind of go on these drinking binges where when I put alcohol into my system, not only is the allergy triggered where I need to continue to drink, it also makes my clothes come off. And if I can't, and I really, it doesn't really matter who you are as long as you're a person, then someone is going to get lucky that night. And so as I would get into the shame and embarrassment of that behavior, my solution would always be to get into a relationship. And that's where kind of those marriages would come in, because that was the solution to the insanity of where my life was going. And what happened for me, through ending up in homeless shelters with small children, I lost custody of one of my children because the violence was becoming so intense in my home. I couldn't keep my oldest daughter safe. It culminated in this point where in August of 2013, I was held at gunpoint for 12 hours by an ex-military Marine in psychosis. And I wish I could say, through the ending of that relationship, I lost everything in my life. I filed bankruptcy, I lost my profession, I moved countries, and that wasn't what brought me into the rooms. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't losing the physical things in the material things in my life. I had to hit that spiritual bottom, and that spiritual bottom for me was the ability to look in the mirror and truly see that that I had become my mother, which was the thing that I was running from, and she was an addict. And so God gave me this clarity to have me show up in the rooms. And I actually showed up. I knew I had a sex problem, and Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous is actually where I started my 12-step journey. And I couldn't maintain sobriety in that program and continue to drink alcohol, which I really, really hoped I could do. In coming into the rooms, I had to make a celibacy commitment. And that was hard because I didn't know how to not have sex. And I didn't know how to not flirt to get what I want, because people were just a commodity to me. I could either get something from you, or you were of complete inconsequence to me. And I wouldn't even remember your name. And so in attempting to try to look at people for being people, I didn't know how to do that when I did come into AA, I really had to put my blinders on, and I really struggled on how to connect with people. When my sponsor did take me through the 12 steps, and I got to that part that we read earlier about the sex inventory and writing an ideals list about what I want in a partner, that was such a struggle for me, because I had no construct of what intimacy could be or could look like, because at the end of the day, I was a runner. I was the person that had affairs. I was the person that would switch genders just to find something different. I always needed more. It always had to be more risky. It always had to be in excess. When I did finally get to a point where I could write ideals down, one of the most important things for me was safety. And I didn't realize how important feeling safe with a person was. I actually am married today. I met my wife in sobriety. I had sworn I was never going to date women again. God had a different plan. And she actually spoke earlier today. And and she has become the safest person in my life. And she truly has accepted me for exactly how I am and how I show up. And I can say that sometimes I struggle to do the same. Her name is Odie, and I am very much the Garfield to her Odie. If you like the Garfield comic strip, I am the one that if she's getting a little too excited, I'll just kind of push her off the ledge because it's a bit too much, and then I'll go take a nap. And so through sobriety and through our relationship, we actually had to have a dating plan, and we had to learn how to date. And that was incredibly hard because I didn't know how to develop an intimate relationship with anyone. And through our relationship, we have done, we actually did a study of the traditions in order to learn how to communicate with each other. And one of the most interesting things that has come out of our relationship that I didn't even realize I did is I like to create stories in my head about what she's thinking and how she's feeling. And a really good example of this would be, if she's having a bad day. And in my head, the story I'm telling myself is that we're done. She's breaking up with me. I need to start packing her stuff and putting it on the front, out in the driveway. And I need to get on a dating app in order to find someone else, in order to fix this. And as my sponsor encouraged me to start being honest about the things that I was thinking and start telling her the story I'm telling myself, I started getting some really weird looks. And so we've really grown together in terms of learning how to communicate with each other in sobriety. And and AA has really given me that opportunity to have that vulnerability in a relationship that I never knew possible. And we're actually coming up on 3 years being together, and that's the longest I've ever been in any sort of relationship. So I think I'm actually going to end there.
Thank you very much. If I could have the Ask It baskets, if some people could bring them up to me at the front. If anyone wants to intercept them on the way, throw in a last question, that'd be great. So if you could bring them right up to me at the front. Thank you very much. And now, as our final panelist, we will have Ken from Pennsylvania. Ken?
Hi, my name's Ken. I think I'm on the wrong panel. I'm not an alcoholic. Never been an alcoholic. When I drank, I didn't like it, so I stopped. I'm a member of Al-Anon, just in case you didn't get that. I am here. I'm not gay, but I related to both of your stories on the relationships and the feelings that we have in these things. And that's what we're here to talk about, is how this stuff affects us at our core. Not physically, but at our core. And you know, what I liked about the reading, and I'm a Big Book Al-Anon member. I love the Big Book. Anytime I sponsor anybody, and I have a home group. My home group is the Serenity Unbound Al-Anon family group. I used to be in Serenity Bound, but we're digital now, so we're Serenity Unbound. And one of the things, I mean, my home group is a Zoom meeting, and I go to a couple of Zoom meetings, but I make it a point for me, my commitment is to go to at least one live meeting a week in my area. And that's important to me because I need that connection. I need that connection with people. I need that intimacy. And sex is not about intimacy. Sex is about power. Sex is about, you know, what you can do for me or what I can do for you. That's what sex is about. And I love that the first line in that the reading that was, you know, we reviewed our conduct. I didn't review your conduct. I'd love to review your conduct and what you did to me, because that's what it's about. It's about what you did to me. Because my feelings prior to coming into these rooms, well, I can't say prior to coming into these rooms, I spent a lot of time. I went to my first ORC in 1970. And I've been coming I went to Alateen. Obviously, I wasn't in Al-Anon then. I was in Alateen. And I've been coming to these rooms now for 53 years, just over 53 years. And I'd like to tell you that I got here and everything became perfect, but I didn't. I get a lot of relief, and alcoholics talk about it all the time. We got relief. Craig talked about it tonight, the first 5 years of sobriety. He was getting relief, not recovery. And I spent a lot of time in these rooms in relief. And part of my relief was what you could do for me. And sex and intimacy, again, are two different things. I was sexual with people. I wasn't intimate with them. You know, they didn't know me. But what it did was it gave me that feeling of self-worth. And that's what in my earlier years, that's what sexual relationships were. Because if you liked me, I could feel good. Just like the alcoholic, you know. Everything I wanted, you know, if they got sober, I'd be fine. I'd be great if they only got sober. And they never got sober. So my relationships were, you know, I must have some self-worth because they're going to sleep with me. You know. And I didn't get married till I was 39 years old. And I made the mistake, don't ever do this. I married an Al-Anon member. You know, don't do that. I trained my whole life to live with an alcoholic. You know, since I was 11 years old, I trained to live with an alcoholic. So 28 years I'm in recovery and relief and then recovery eventually. And I marry an Al-Anon. We have the same weapons we throw at each other. You know, you may be right. Now, if you say that to an alcoholic, they say, "Oh, I'm right." I said, "You may be right." But you say that to an Al-Anon, and them's fighting words. You know. But I spent a lot of years. I didn't get married till I was 39, and I spent those years trying to find some kind of making me feel better. And that's all relationships were to me, is to make me feel better, you know. And I got engaged once in that time because I should all over myself. And you know, I was 33 years old, and so, you know, I should be settling down, and I should be getting married. And I found a girl that looked great on my arm. And, you know, asked her to marry me, and we lived together, and it was a disaster. Because we weren't intimate. You know, we never talked about anything. You know, and it was just a, she was also an Al-Anon. You know, I should have known. I'd stay away from them. But I had this, you know, I had this relationship, and it was just absolutely horrible. And eventually, for the first time, we broke up a bunch of times. You know, we lived together. We broke up. Eventually, I went to her one day, and I sat on, and I prayed about this, and I'd done it, and I talked to my sponsor, and I sat down at the end of the bed, and I said, I'm going to move. We're going to break up. We're done. You know, and I was calm. For the first time, I was calm when I did that. Because I did what my sponsor had suggested to me for years, is invite God in everywhere. Whatever relationship I'm having, invite God in. And when I invite God in, it's good. If I have God with me, it's a good thing. And I was calm for the first time when we broke up. I didn't fight about it. And I just said, you know, it's not working. It's not working for me. It's not working for us. And, you know, and we were still living in the same place and everything like that. We went out for dinner a couple of days later, and we're driving back home, and she says, you know, we almost broke up a couple of days ago. And I said, we did. Because she was in denial, because she's an Al-Anon, and, you know, we're sick. We're as sick as the alcoholic. I do everything you did without drinking. You know, I have a thinking disease. I don't have I qualify for Al-Anon because of what I did in here, not because of what you did out there. It's not about you, it's about me. And thank God, because I can recover from my disease, I can't recover from yours. And with, you know, what I had to do, and you know, and you talked about it, Daniel, you talked about that celibacy thing. I took a year of celibacy because I wanted to get to know me better. You know, intimacy is into me see. You know, that's what I want. I have to know me before I can know you. I have to know who I am. And that's what the steps do for me. When I work these steps, I understand more about myself. I understand who I am, what I like, what I don't like. You know, and sex no longer became a weapon or a relief for me. It became something that was actually beautiful. You know, my wife today, like I said, my wife she's relatively new. She's only in Allen about 36 years. You know, and she's over at the dance right now. And Zach texted me on Wednesday and said, hey, you know, can you be on and I know you talked to me about it 4 years ago, but, you know, so he texted me on Wednesday, says, can you be on this panel on sex and intimacy? And I said, sure. He goes, okay, there's going to be a lot of new people there. There's going to be questions. I said, well, thanks for not telling me that first. You know, but I didn't tell, you know, I got here and I'm not on the program, and I'm thinking, great, they forgot. And then I was standing out there, and Zach said, okay, let's go. So here we are. But I took that time off to get to know Ken, because I need to know me. I had to be intimate with myself. Intimacy is about myself, too. You know, I have to know who I am, and that's what those steps do. When I relieve that wreckage of the past and move, Al-Anon, we work exactly the same steps as AA does. Little different focus. So if you're looking here, this is the AA step. So you take a step like this, we work exactly the same things. I got exactly the same bit, but now there's this little bit over here I didn't do in AA, but I do this in Al-Anon, and where my focus is just a little bit different. And I have to get to know me. The one word is different. In step 12, you carry the message to alcoholics, we carry the message to others. That's it. Other than that, it's exactly the same steps. You know, and it's an amazing thing. But they talked about a sex inventory, and we do those too. You know, we do the sex inventory. Bill Wilson had a sense of humor too. He talks about sex on page 69. But anyway, we do a sex inventory, and so I understand why I do the things I do. My wife and I today have an incredible sexual and intimate relationship. We can talk to each other about anything. I have an intimate relationship with my sponsor because of working these steps. But you know, and I talked about it before. I can have sex without being intimate. I cannot do that today because I know who I am. I bring God with me in everything I do, including my physical relationships. You know, But I really have to be careful about my intimacy, because I'm a very, I love people, and I love getting to know people, but I need to be really, when I'm intimate with someone, I have to know my reasons for that too. If I'm intimate with another female, and not sexually, but just intimate with them, I need to know why I'm doing that. And I have friends that I can do that with. So I have friends in these rooms that I've been friends with. My friend is here who brought me to my first meeting. We've known each other since 1966. We've been in fellowship together since 1969. I'm very intimate with him. But I have to be careful too. I have to know my motives for being intimate with someone and for getting to know someone. And my sponsor always asks me these simple questions. Is it a legitimate Al-Anon request? Is it a legitimate Al-Anon request? And I have sponsored women in the past. Very rarely. And I do service sponsor with a couple of women now. But mostly I sponsor men, because I have that message for them. I have that message on how to be a good husband, how to be a good father, how to be a good friend, how to be a good Al-Anon member, how to be someone you could be proud of. Today I'm someone I can be proud of. When I walk down the street, I can be proud of myself. When I look in the mirror, I can look at Ken. I have a simple regime I do in the morning. The second I wake up, the first moment of consciousness that I have, I say a simple prayer. I said, God, please get into my head, my heart, and my mouth before I do. And my mouth, because, my wife wakes me up and sometimes I want to say things to her. Sometimes she wakes up grumpy, sometimes she lets me sleep, And, but I do that prayer every single day now. I learned that prayer a couple of years ago, and I do that prayer every single day. And then I have my RPMs, my reading, prayer, and meditation that I do, whatever works for me, But I had to learn to be intimate also with myself. And for me, I'm done anyway. Zach, don't put that up. Again, I'm completely different than the two of you, and I completely identify with both of your stories. It was just absolutely amazing to be here. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ken. If you could both flip on the wireless mics in front of you. Daniel and Ken, if you could turn those mics on to answer some questions. All right, so we'll get straight into the questions. The first question we have is, what are your biggest tools for maintaining balance while pursuing pleasure? So what are your biggest tools for maintaining balance?
I feel like this is a trivia question.
What are the actions that you rely on to maintain balance in your romantic relationships?
Balance in relationships. Biggest tools.
Anyone? Ken?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ken. I just talked about that. I invite God into everything. There's nothing too insignificant, what I think is insignificant in my life, to not invite God into. Every aspect of my life. And when I do that, it's good. If it's God, it's good. And that's that's how I figure out too what is and isn't God's will for me. If I can't invite God with me to do something, it's not His will. If I have trouble getting the words out, please do this with me, then it's not good. And I won't do it. I won't. I've disciplined myself that far. Took me a while, but I got there.
I would say fairly simple questions. Am I lying? Like, whatever I'm going into sexually or intimacy-wise, am I lying, and am I hurting anybody? So that I'm causing no harm and that everything is honest. Like, I'm just candor. And if I can't engage with someone without lying or without hurting them, then I should not be doing it.
Yeah, I think that for me, intent is a really important word. I have to check and see what my intent is with any interaction. And then the pause, because what I've really come to recognize, especially when it comes to my intimate relationships, the first gut reaction that I have to anything is generally bad. And so I need to pause then respond appropriately.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question we have is, how important is the sex ideal that the big book talks about? Anyone want to talk about the sex ideal?
I think it's really important. It really helped frame what I was looking for. Like, what is my ideal? And like I mentioned, like through my sobriety, I've been sober for now 16 years. There were periods where I wanted relationships, and there are periods where I don't want no relationship. I don't want and I want to be very clear about that. So like, I just want to have fun. Or like there's a period where I'm like, and as long as I'm doing that, where I'm not harming anyone, and so framing that about what my ideal is. And that ideal can change. It can change on experience and what I'm going through in my life, what I have time for, like knowing honestly, like I don't have time for another person in my life. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work in your own life coming third. Because there's the relationship, there's them, and then there's me. And so I don't know sometimes if I had time for that. So regulating what is honest about what I need. Yeah.
So what I can comment on that is that I think that we had gone on 2 dates. So we were friends first, and then we got on 2 dates, and then we actually sat down and compared our ideals lists. And we found them that we each complemented and had like a lot of the main important ideals that we had listed on each other's lists. And I think if there had been any major discrepancies there, we probably would not have continued our relationship.
Yeah, for me, when my wife and I got together, we took it really slow. And that was the, also we were living in 2 different countries. She lives in the States, I lived here in Toronto. And, we had to take it slow that way. But even sexually, we took it slow because I didn't want to rush in. I didn't want to do things the way I did them before. Like thank you, here we are, and let's go. And, and it was months, and we were seeing each other almost every weekend. And it was months, but we got to know each other. We got to talk, we got to hang out, we got to do these things. And that was the important part, was to just, again, when I invite God in, He gives me the direction I need when I'm ready to listen, and I get those nudges, and I listen to them today.
Thanks. All right, this is an interesting one. What about the fear of what other members might say about a new relationship in the rooms? What about the fear of what others might say about a new relationship in the rooms?
I'm supposed to care what other people think?
What?
I'm supposed to care what other people think? Okay. I guess it depends, like, how much time does this person have? Like, I mean, if you're young and, like, or if you just, like, if you're, like, 3 days sober, like, what would anyone want from you? Like, what do you have? What are you bringing to the table? Like if you're on a dating app and you are like a month sober and you say you have a roommate and you're like, yeah, you have a roommate because you're in a bunk bed in a detox. That is not, what do you have to bring them? Like, what are you there for them? Nothing. So stop it. Just get out of that.
Anything to add?
Yeah, my whole goal in being in sobriety was to be my authentic self, and so it wasn't important to me what other people thought. One of the experiences that I did have was I have children, and so people, because of the way I appear and because of my children, certain people in the rooms actually had preconceived ideas about my sexuality, and I did lose, or friendships changed when they found out that I was in a same-sex relationship, and I grieved those and I moved on because I had to be authentic to who I am.
Again, as a longtime member, I don't date new people. I never did. Like when I was in these rooms, I didn't, I call them swoopers. They're hanging around the door waiting for the new person to come in so they can, go do step, 1 and 12, like my life's unmanageable. I want to share it with you, and 1 and 12 leads to 13, and 13 stepping is just something that, I mean, it's not a judgment thing, but I just won't hang out with those people either. It's what I want to do for myself. I'm not going to judge you if you want to do it, but have at it. But don't come and talk to me whenever something goes goofy, because you know better. And anybody I sponsor, then I'll talk to them about it. Hey, get away from there. I have a guy that we in Al-Anon, like there's more women than men. Obviously, there's a lot of women in Al-Anon, and we always sent around a thing for put your numbers on and everything. And I never put my number on a woman's tag that was going around, a card that was going around that we were giving to a woman, because she doesn't need to call me. There's no reason. And one of the guys says, well, I'm a member of Al-Anon. I should be able. No, because you don't know what you're running into there. You don't know who's like. She could go home. Her husband is alcoholic and crazy, and she sees some man's number on there, and it's like, no, don't do that, because it's not about me.
Fantastic. So the next question we have is, 9 months sober. Why do I still struggle with the desire to be loved and to be in a relationship? What would you do?
That's a God problem. That's all about, that has everything to do with the God hole, and only God can fill that hole.
I'm good with that.
All right. You want to have anything to
I
add?
I come from a line of gay men sponsors, so to add to what she said, that hole in your heart is not going to be filled with a dick in your hole. And that shit's the tea. You gotta tell it like it is.
And that's why you get multiple invites to be on sex panels. Okay, next, a little deeper here.
Now you know why you're here, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is a good one. What boundaries helped in the beginning of sober sex? What boundaries helped in the beginning of sober sex? Or if you want to extend that, sex over relationships.
Why are they both looking at me? I would say, what boundaries? I would prefer that no one drank or did drugs initially. Like I am uncomfortable in my own. I'm precarious about my own sobriety early. I was precarious about my own sexuality, and so I needed to be with someone who was safe and understanding. I was also very transparent about where I was, and so what I found, especially on any kind of dating app or something, I was just very transparent about it. And I did not hide. And when you find out, you realize that not everyone in the world actually cares about drinking. It's a really funny thing. We care about it all the time, and some normal people don't even know it exists. And it's very funny. And so if you're transparent about it, pick someone that's safer or like hang out. But if they really have a problem with you drinking, they have a problem with drinking, is what I've always found.
So being in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, we have a tool that we use called the dating plan. And so in my dating plan, I had goals in terms of how long I wanted to know someone before I became physically intimate. I had rules around driving myself to and from dates. I had book-in calls with my sponsor where I touched base with them before I went on the date, and I touched base with them when I was finished the date. Being in public places. So I had to have set boundaries around being in safe spaces where I could trust myself that I wouldn't cross the boundaries that I was intending not to cross.
What was that question again?
What boundaries helped in the beginning of sober sex?
Well, newcomers are great. They vibrate. But other than that, no, I'm just kidding. That's what a friend of mine. Sorry. See, that's true. Yeah.
How did that go for you? I'm curious.
And again, the boundaries when I was younger and I was single, one of my things for me was, and even with my wife and I, neither one of us drink. That's the other thing, somebody was saying. I don't want that in my life today. And that was a very adamant thing I had. And whether I was dating with someone in Al-Anon or AA or out, I didn't want to be around alcoholics. I didn't want that in my life. I didn't want to deal with it. I dealt with it all my life. And in my partner, I don't want to deal with it. And my wife and I, we have a sober home. We're both in Al-Anon, And the great things about Al-Anon is I can work the steps and drink, And yeah, I know, damn it, right? But that's what I want. I don't want that in my life today. And that's that's one of the boundaries I have. And you talk about it. It's very important. I have to know what I like.
Thank you.
I would also say, just to add on to it, that during the light of the day, we think more rationally than we do like on a Friday or Saturday night, right? So planning it or planning ahead, that the boundary would be like during the daytime, set some time limits, like 1 to 3 hours or something, and then even for a date or for any kind of interaction, having those kind of daytime boundaries or knowing someone's going to be there makes you feel a little bit more safer, and that you can say no at any time. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a larger, more ethereal question, but I think it's a good one to ask. Is there a way to explore sexuality without trying to escape yourself? Is there a way to explore sexuality without trying to escape yourself? I interpret this as using sex as escapism, as an alternative for alcohol.
Oh.
Like, you try to escape yourself, what's going on with you, and just throw yourself codependent.
But it says escape your sexuality, right?
It says, how do you explore sexuality without
trying to escape yourself,
like pursuing sex to escape?
So I get asked this a lot because of my story, and people will go, "I'm not sure if I'm really gay," or "I'm not sure if I'm," and I'm like, well, if you're not sure if you're really gay, go suck a dick. And if you're not sure if you're a lesbian or not, go eat a vagina. But the escape is, what does thinking about that is, what's going on in your life that you're thinking about that's taking you away from? And so that's an interesting question. Like, if you really want to go and explore it, go try it. And if you're doing it, and on page 70 of the big book, it talks a lot about, what you're doing. And is it harmful? Are you there for the other person? But, if you're using just the wondering as a way to avoid something, then I would definitely look at what that is. Yeah.
Anything to add?
I just told people to suck a dick.
Yeah, I
No,
can't quite articulate that one.
No, it's a deeper one.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, anything to add?
And again, I'm a big believer in the steps are not one and done.
Mm.
It's over and over and over again. And I have to get right with myself. I have to do those steps and get right with God. That awakening of the Spirit I have in step 12. And it says having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Mm. Not a result. It's not one thing that happens. It's the promise. It's the golden ring at the end. And the great thing about step 12, it's also the human step, right? Because we try and we practice. We never perfect it. But I keep working on it and I keep improving on it. And the only way I'm going to know is just to keep working on it and to keep trying to improve myself and my relationship with my higher power. And if I can invite God in, it's good. If I can't, if I have trouble with it, we have a thing in Al-Anon. It's when in doubt, don't. Don't just do something, sit there.
All right, so that concludes the question portion of the panel. I'd like to thank our panelists again for sharing with us tonight.